Welcome back to the Guitar in a Year, Beginner to Intermediate. I'm Korey Hicks, and we are on week number 43. The intro music you heard there was Billy's Bounce, performed by George Benson. I have the transcription available over on Patreon, so if you're an advanced student and you'd like to take a look at that, go ahead. Warning, it's really fast. It's just a blues, but it's a jazz blues, so the chords there are a little bit different. But go ahead and check that out over on Patreon. Also, the PDF for today's lesson is going to be over there. There's a lot of diagrams that we're going to need for today's lesson, so please go over to Patreon and check that out. Also, at the end of the lesson today, we're going to be talking about practicing. We've had a lot of brand new concepts, and I want to show you how I would organize your time using what we have today. All right, so we're going to continue with the caged voicings that we have. We've already done the C shape and the A shape. Just to recap, that C chord, we moved up. So we basically refingered it so we could move it. And then we took an A chord and we refingered that and moved that up. Our examples were shown with D as in dog, like this. That is the C form of D. That's the A form of D. Today, we're going to go to G form of D. So this chord is the very first one in the CAGED system that I find that a lot of people play incorrectly. Now, a lot of books are going to show it to you like this. Now, in my experience, that's not really shown in music very often. It's not used in songs that way. It's used like this. So how am I playing this chord? Well, I'm putting my pinky on the 10th fret of the low E string. My ring finger is going to play the 9th fret on the A string. And then I'm going to take my pointer finger and I'm barring it on strings 4, 3, and 2. That's that second inversion D major chord, right? So A, D, F sharp. And so the chord looks like this. Okay. This is used for a lot of those. And it's used kind of in tandem with this C shape. So if I'm in the key of D major, for example, I can move the C shape up to G. And now I have, there's my G chord, and there is my D chord. And we're going to be doing some exercise to give you facility with this moving on. So, just like all these other chords, I should be able to move this around. If I move it down 2 frets, I get C. If I move it down to the 5th fret, I get A. Of course, I get A flat, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, B flat, E. Just like we've done with all of the other shapes, we're going to investigate what scales are going to be used with this. So first, let's assume that D is the one chord in the key of D major. So I have to ask myself, what pattern of the D major scale would show up at the 7th fret? And this is why we need to be practicing our patterns all the time. After a while, you will have played all 12 keys, all those patterns so much that you'll be able to instantly know exactly where a pattern is. I need pattern 5 of D major. Well, that's at the 5th fret. I need pattern 6 of B flat major. Well, that's at the 3rd fret. You will know exactly where these things are found. Well, if I need a D major scale at the 7th fret, that's going to give us pattern 6. So pattern 6 is going to go with this chord. And just like everything else we've done, you're going to find this chord on the inside of that pattern. Let's take a look at D as a 4 chord. So D is the 4 chord of the key of A. What pattern of A major would be at the 7th fret? Pattern 2. So I'm playing the second pattern of A major. You'll notice that it kind of transforms the whole system into A major, because that's what's happening. So if I'm playing a song in the key of A, I could go using CAGED as my shapes. All right, but what if D is the 5 chord in the key of G? Well, the pattern in the key of G in this location is going to be pattern 3. And so that's that chord inside of G major pattern 3. Hopefully this makes sense. If you guys have any questions on this, put them in the comments below. I get a lot of emails on this throughout the week, and I want you guys to know that it will make sense. So it's just, you have to think of, my chord is at the 7th fret, therefore my pattern needs to be at the 7th fret. A lot of people are like, well, why are you playing a D major scale here? Isn't D major the first pattern here? Or they'll try and pick a different pattern. So the important thing for you to do is to think, if I'm playing the chord somewhere, the pattern that is associated with it needs to be in that exact same location. It doesn't make a lot of sense if I'm playing my chord here, and then I go up there to play the pattern. I want to be able to see the chord on the inside of my scale. And this is going to help with chord tone soloing, playing the changes, and all of that more complicated stuff that we're going to be talking about next year in the intermediate course. All right, so we have our G shape of CAGED. At this point, I'd really like you guys to start practicing all 3 of these shapes in cycle 4. It would go like this. C with those 3. Now I'm going to go to F. And so I have to start off, where's my F? Well, it's here. Now I have to go to B flat, so I'd have to find B flat. Then I have to find E flat. And then I'd have to find A flat. And then I'd have to find D flat. And then I'd have to find B. And then I have to find E. And I have to find A. And then I'd have to find D. And then I'd have to find G. Now that is a bit of a challenge. Eventually, once we get all 5 of these CAGED shapes, we're going to be doing all 60 as an exercise. And then, just a little spoiler alert, we're going to learn a song, a Jimi Hendrix song, that's going to help us to practice all of these different shapes so you can see how they work in a song. If you want something right now that's going to work with this using what we have already, why don't you go back to Waiting on the World to Change by John Mayer. When we played Waiting on the World to Change, we did something like this. But now you can use these shapes. Check this out. Now, just having these 3 CAGED shapes gives us an economy of motion that we didn't have before. Before, we're all over the place. So this CAGED thing is going to have us in one spot. How do you think people are able to sing and look at the audience while they're singing and playing guitar? Well, sometimes people use a capo, right? But if you're an electric guitar player or you're the lead guitar player and you don't want to have to mess around with the capo, doing it this way is a really good idea. It's going to help you to focus on the song, focus on entertaining people, focus on singing the lyrics, and not having to worry about moving around so much on the guitar. All right, let's get started with our next arpeggio. Last week I had hinted that this is one of the most important arpeggios on the entire neck. The most common structure that you can find in a major key is actually a minor 7th arpeggio. So if you remember back to our chords in a key, we'll just stay with the key of D major for today. D major, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, C sharp diminished, back to D. So there are 3 major chords and 3 minor chords in that key, and then the weirdo, the half diminished chord. But 2 of those major chords are major 7ths, and one of them is a dominant 7th. So we're not really counting that as part of the major family. It's its own thing. It's a dominant 7th chord. In the intermediate course, we're going to go really deep in depth on dominant 7th chords. They're pretty much the most important chord in all of music. So that leaves us with 3 minor 7 chords, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So our minor 7th arpeggio is not only easy to play, but it's found in a ton of different songs. You've heard this. Sultans of Swing, right? These types of arpeggios are used all the time in guitar music. So what are we doing here? Well, let's start off with our D major 7. Remember we played it like that? And then we did a D dominant 7th, where we took the major 7th arpeggio and we lowered the 7th by a half step. That's how we got the dominant 7th. Well, today we're taking that dominant 7th and all we're doing is lowering the 3rd. So instead of playing that F sharp, it would be the F note. And we would do that on the way up as well. The B string note, which was at the 7th fret, now becomes the 6th. Now, it doesn't matter where you practice these. We can do them on C or F or D or wherever you want to play it. It's the form that we're looking for and the interval content of that. So D major 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 7. D dominant 7th, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7. And then D minor 7, D flat 3. So 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. To practice this arpeggio, I like to do something I call a roll, and I've talked about these before. The minor 7 arpeggio is the easiest one to get a roll started because everything is within 4 frets. And just to make things a little bit easier, I'm using a hammer-on to grab that flatted 3rd. Then I'm downstroking on the D, hammering on, downstroking on the A note, going down again to get that C, hammering on to get the D, continuing a downstroke with the F, and continuing the downstroke again. So you get this, what we call a sweep. You ever heard of sweeps? So sweep picking is basically this, it's kind of like a strum, I guess you could say. It's kind of like going straight down, right? Only I am not restriking strings. The pick is kind of going through them like that. And you can try that with just a little minor arpeggio. I'm just going. Okay? I'm not restriking every string. I'm just kind of slowly dragging my pick through it. Or quickly dragging my pick through it, I guess you could say. So I remember when I first started getting into these, I would do this. I really remember sitting there for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, just going up and down each one of those arpeggios. And it was a really interesting time because I was like, wait, this isn't all these different songs. It really is. So today we have those 3 arpeggios. We also have our 3 CAGED shapes. And I want to talk a little bit about practicing at this point. If you go over to Patreon, I did a video last week that actually kind of goes really in depth on practicing at this point. So what I would do is find yourself a pad of whatever key of the day you're doing this in. So let's just say it's D. And so I'm going to get a pad going on D. And then I'm going to do my note recognition in D, be able to find all my D tones. I'm going to practice all my scale patterns in the key of D. I'm going to practice all my chords in the key of D. And then I'm going to practice the CAGED shapes that I know in the key of D, the bar chords in the key of D. I'm going to practice the arpeggios I know in the key of D. So now I know the 1 major 7, the 2 minor 7, the 3 minor 7, the 4 major 7, the 5 dominant 7th, and the 6 minor 7. We'll get to that half diminished next week, but you have almost the entire key that you can do in the 7th chord arpeggios. And then I would do all the triads. And when I'm practicing triads, I'm not just strumming them or something. I'm trying to come up with a line or something, right? Or maybe I'll go trying to come up with a phrase that I'll use in music, right? right? And so this takes a little bit of time. Well, can you write that out on tab? That's not the point. The point is sit down for 10 minutes a day with these triads and you yourself come up with these types of phrases. I didn't learn that from a book and I didn't learn it from a teacher. I learned it by sitting down with my guitar day after day and learning how to execute some of these structures over music. Maybe just playing up and down one gave me the idea. I'm like, that kind of sounds like a thought or an idea that would work. And I work on smoothing it out. And then that whole process might take 20 minutes, right? So that would be over the course of 2 days maybe. And so you just keep working at these things until you finally get something that you can use. So with those triads, I might be able to come up with a 1, 5, 6, 4 chord progression, the key of D. And so I'm doing that over the triad section. The pentatonics, please don't forget about the pentatonics. If I'm doing that D major pentatonic, we have that. Those are some of the most used structures on the guitar. Sometimes I'll get a student, they'll be like, hey, what was that? Can you write that out? You already know what that is. So how do you get from knowing what it is and knowing that it's just a pentatonic to gain facility with it? It's time spent. It's time putting on that backing track. And I have to say at this point, and I've noticed this from a lot of students, the point of your practice right now that you cannot trade out needs to be improvisation. That backing track. So if it's all these structures in the key of D major, putting on a backing track in D major and actually improvising over it, using the structures. Go up a triad, down a pentatonic, up an arpeggio, down a modal pattern, all these different things that we have access to. We need to be speaking it. Some people, I find, they just omit that part of the practice. They're like, yeah, I want to get really good at all these structures before I start improvising. That's not how language works. Language works by actually speaking it. So you have to go to the backing tracks. Just go to YouTube, look up D major backing track or whatever key you're in, and work these things out. It's not going to sound great, but if you started learning German today, it's not going to sound great. Or if you started learning Spanish or something like that, you can't just focus on the grammar of Spanish. You can't just focus on reading Spanish and never speaking it with other people. You won't get any facility with it whatsoever. So please, if you're practicing right now and you're forgetting this 15 minutes of improvisation, it trumps everything else, okay? So super important to do that. And then finding a song that works on this stuff as well. And one of the songs that we're going to be working on moving forward, we're going to start working on the solo to Let It Be by the Beatles. That'll be over on Patreon. But I want you guys to kind of see how some of these things work together. And it's going to be really fun to put this together with CAGED. There is a little descending line that I want to show you guys. Be looking for that. Obviously, I can't put the songs on YouTube. We'll get demonetized. So go on over to Patreon for that. All right. Well, if you have any other questions about this week's lesson, put them in the comments below and subscribe and like if you haven't already. And I will see you in week number 44 next time. Have a great week of practice. Peace.